Welcome back, Quest for You fans. It's episode 163. And this week, we're geeking out a little bit on the science side, which I don't do a lot. But understanding what happens in our body that helps or hinders our quest for a better and more fulfilling life is critical. These recent advances in research have finally overturned some of the old models and concepts of the way we view our brains. You may remember that in the 1980s, it was believed that each person was born with a finite quota of brain cells, which gradually died away over a lifetime, with no new cells being created to replace the ones that were lost. This suggested that damage to the brain could not be repaired. Well, we now know that the brain self-renews cells, and that a damaged brain can regenerate itself. Neuroscience is the scientific study of the nervous system, the brain, the spinal column, neurons, and the senses. And the rapid pace of new discoveries in this area promises the application of this knowledge to everyday life. So yesterday, we talked about rewards and threats and how our brain will approach situations that are a potential reward and avoid those that could pose a threat. So remember from yesterday's episode, the threat response is when we feel we don't have control, our status or autonomy is in danger, or when we feel there's no certainty or fairness. The reward response is when the environment or situation makes us feel better. We feel better than, free to choose, related to others, and so on. The threat response engages the part of the brain that kicks off the fight or flight mechanism. Because the majority of the brain's resources are focused on protection, there isn't a lot left over for other executive level activities. The reward response, on the other hand, triggers positive emotions and increased dopamine levels. Studies suggest that when people are experiencing positive emotions, their collaboration and problem-solving abilities are heightened. They are more innovative and creative and generally perform better overall. So with this understanding, we can now move on to the SCARF model. David Rock, a leading neuroscience practitioner, developed this model to help us understand the true drivers of human social behavior. And the SCARF model is an easy way to remember and act upon the social triggers that can generate both the approach and avoidance responses. The goal of this model is to help us plan our responses to people in a way that minimizes the easily activated threat responses and maximize positive, engaged states of mind. What makes the SCARF model so useful is that it identifies the 5 domains that activate the primary reward or primary threat circuitry in a person's brain. Understanding these, we can then use them in our interactions with others. That's why I like this model a lot. It's not just a theoretical concept. We can use it to help us become better at working and communicating with others. These 5 domains of social experience are status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. So let's look at these individually and explore how threats and rewards can be managed in each. Status. Status is about our perception of importance as it relates to other people. It's about rank, pecking order, and seniority. If you have worked in a company with more than a couple of employees, you have definitely come face to face with status. Status also surfaces in our friendships. It's that annoying feeling you cannot shake, that your best friend has more than you, has a better life, has an advantage that you don't have, and so on. When we feel better than another person, our sense of status goes up. This activates the brain's primary reward circuitry that we talked about yesterday. Dopamine levels rise and we feel better. On the other hand, when we perceive a real reduction in status, it can generate a strong negative response. And this happens even in small, seemingly minor situations, like when you give advice or you correct something someone said, or when you're suggesting improvements, or, like it happens often to me, you accidentally forget to include a team member on an email. All of us have the tendency to get defensive, which is the status threat response. Being aware of the importance of status to everyone You can be more mindful in your interactions with others and help avoid everyday arguments, many of which are rooted in status threat. 1. Keep people informed. Nobody likes to be left out. Communicate, share your thoughts, and include others in your decisions. 2. Give positive feedback more regularly. Compliments, acknowledgement, and encouragement make us feel good. We all like to hear it, whether it's at work, from our boss, or at home from our family. Give regular positive feedback to make people more comfortable and avoid them having to guess about their ranking when it comes to the relationship with you. And 3, provide opportunities to grow. Learning new skills makes us feel good. Our brain loves novelty. You have probably at some point taught someone something, including a child. Did you notice their excitement at being able to perform the new function? Or do you remember how you felt when you finally mastered that new skill? Certainty. Our brain uses past experiences and pattern recognition to operate efficiently. So every time you do something you have done before, like brushing your teeth, picking up a cup of coffee, or driving your car, the brain draws on memory from previous experiences. If the handle of your coffee cup is wet, or your toothbrush is not in the same spot, you almost feel a little jolt of surprise when your brain doesn't know how to respond for a split second because things are different. The brain likes to be able to predict what's going to happen next because that way it can conserve resources for more critical, potentially life-threatening situations. Uncertainty generates an error response in the frontal cortex. When this happens, all the attention and resources are focused on the error. That's when you don't feel like eating or going out with your friends because you're worried about the security of your job or what your boss is expecting of you. Certainty creates a sense of reward, and we talked about the things that give us that feeling. Knowing where you will spend the night, that your car will be fixed tonight, that your appointment will end on time. We want things to go according to plan because that gives us a sense of peace. Any kind of significant change generates uncertainty. You know this for yourself, and you need to keep it in mind when your children want to know if they can spend the night at a friend's house, or your spouse who wants to make weekend plans with you. You can make an effort to mitigate the psychological threat of not knowing what's going to happen next for yourself and for those around you. My office is going through a redesign process and people are being moved around. It's the perfect example to observe the threat of uncertainty. Everyone is up in arms. Where will I sit? Even moving just one cubicle over, same general area, same size cubicle, same window, yet people struggle even with small changes like that. So here are some ways to increase certainty reward response. 1, have a plan. Always have a plan, especially when you're responsible for other people. And communicate your plan. Let others know what you're thinking. 2, keep your word. Others are counting on you. When I don't call my mother as promised during our regular time on Sunday, she freaks out. She feels a threat. She gets unsure and she thinks something happened to me. Respect others by keeping your word. Often we overpromise and then we bail out. That's not fair to someone who's counted on you. Keep your word and make adjustments going forward. It's better to say no right away, instead of making promises that you cannot keep. And 3, break big tasks down into small steps. When you set goals for yourself and others, they can appear lengthy and complex, which can cause stress and tension. We find it difficult to feel a sense of control and movement going forward. Sometimes we don't even start because the task appears so insurmountable. Breaking work down into smaller chunks can help increase a sense of certainty. Autonomy. Autonomy is about the perception of control over one's environment. The more we feel we have choices and are able to call the shots, the better we feel. The opposite of autonomy is control. So think of situations where you are controlling, trying to manage every detail, asking too many questions, or pushing in other ways. Having certainty is knowing we are on the right track. Having autonomy is having the space to unfold and move forward at our own pace. So give direction and then let people do their thing. And here are some more practical ways on how to increase the autonomy reward response. 1. Give space. An increase in the perception of autonomy feels rewarding. I know I work much better under a boss who's less hands-on than someone who micromanages. An overbearing person has me constantly doubting and questioning myself. So let go. Allow others to run with their projects, including your children, and trust the outcome will be good. 2. Give up some control. This works at home and at work. Yes, as a manager and a parent, you need to keep things in check. But you can also give up some of the smaller decisions. Giving children the option to pick between 2 options gives them a sense of autonomy. At work, let people run smaller projects on their own. This not only helps them, but it also gives you greater insight into their capabilities. 3. Measure the right things. Listen to episode 160 on this topic. When you focus on a limited set of measuring tools, it can constrict your sense of autonomy. Acknowledge other milestones, and this will motivate you to move forward. It applies at work as well. Not all projects lead to the intended outcome. Measure the effort and the lessons learned as your result. Relatedness. Relatedness is about a sense of belonging, our sense of being accepted for who we are, our need to be around people who are like us and share our values and dreams. Relatedness is also about being part of something bigger, about a shared purpose and vision. The relatedness thread kicks off immediately when we meet someone for the first time. The brain is trying to figure out whether the person in front of you is a friend or a foe. A foe, or just any person we meet for the first time, causes more stress for our brain to deal with, as we talked about earlier. Feeling relatedness, on the other hand, significantly impacts your motivation and engagement. We open up, we get creative, and we want to show the other person that we like them. Oxytocin is a hormone produced naturally in the brain, and higher levels of this substance are associated with greater affiliative behavior. Many people overcome the relatedness dilemma with alcohol. It's quicker than having to navigate a room full of strangers and trying to figure out which person might become a friend. Alcohol helps to reduce this automatic social threat response, and it enables us to communicate more easily with strangers. When members of a group feel connected to each other and share a sense of meaning and purpose, stress and tension are reduced and productivity increases. Relatedness can also positively impact both physical and mental health, both for the individual and for the group as a whole. So here are some ways to increase the relatedness reward response. 1. Buddy up. If you have a friend with similar goals as yours, get closer. Share your progress and get insight from him or her. And if not, try to find a buddy, someone who shares the same quest. You hear me say this a lot, but Meetup is a perfect place to find others that are pursuing the same goals as you. 2. Focus on relationship building. You may not think you need the people over in the other departments or your neighbors. However, I have found that every time I reached out, it has always been rewarding. Not everyone becomes your best friend, but getting to know people helps you to relate to them in many other ways. Your neighbor might help you keep your mail next time you're out of town. Your coworker in marketing may hook you up with product samples or become a lunch buddy. Fairness. Fairness is about the perceived fairness of exchanges between people. I know we all have screamed at some point, "It's not fair." People may perceive a threat of fairness when they perceive there are different standards for different people or inconsistent repercussions for non-adherence. A fairness threat often is the result of saying one thing and doing another. The perception of fairness often comes from comparing ourselves. He can work from home on Fridays and I can't. The people that report to you watch you carefully and how you treat everyone. So be aware. Every decision you make can have unintended consequences. Some ways to increase the fairness reward. 1. Increase transparency. This is the easiest way to reduce the fairness threat. Be open and honest about what's going on behind the scenes. It builds trust and confidence. And remember that it always helps with certainty. When your team understands that there is a reason one member works from home on Friday, it may even help make your team stronger. 2. Increase communication and involvement. The more people know about the how and the why, the less likely they are to perceive a fairness threat. Share stuff that's going on, even if it doesn't pertain to their immediate areas. People still like to know. And 3, be consistent. This is key. It's especially important to be consistent in your treatment of people. Inconsistent treatment often triggers the fairness threat response. We hear this often when it comes to pay. So I hope you found this model as helpful as I did in understanding what motivates people. The SCARF model helps us both minimize threats and maximize rewards inherent in everyday experiences. Remember, these reactions are hardwired into the brain and are not the result of conscious choices. An emotionally intelligent, self-aware adult will have some capacities to suppress or manage the threat response and generate their own reward state, but not everyone has the understanding that you now have. And understanding these 5 domains of SCARF can increase your self-awareness and help us with our behaviors and reactions. And then it can have a huge impact on how we manage and work with those around us. When it comes to our responsibility as a leader or a parent or a partner, you can now have a better framework to create the conditions to help each person to perform at their best. So thank you for listening to this little bit more science-oriented episode and a little bit longer than normal episode. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Much love.